and welcome to the Painted Bride Quarterly Slush Pile. Thank you so much for tuning in, clicking, whatever we want to say, to be with us right now here today. And we are going to discuss the poems of Sarah Elkins. How this works is we find poems that come to us and we think, hey, this would make a good conversation for the show. And then we have an editorial meeting. And we record it and then we share it with you. And it's all our way of showing you how much we care about each and every submission that we receive. So this I'll keep the mic and starts with me today, Kathleen Volk Miller. We're Zooming from separate places and I'm in my third floor office home. And I'm going to, I guess we'll stay in America and bounce it to Jason. Hi, Jason.
Hi, I am coming to you from Upper Manhattan, also known as Harlem, also known as Washington Heights. And it is a beautiful, beautiful day. And I will pass it on to Samantha.
Hi, everyone. I'm here in Baltimore, which is also known as Charm City. And so I hope that we are charming for you today. And I will pass it back to Philadelphia to Talia.
Hi, I'm Talia Thomas. I'm here in West Philadelphia. It's actually a really, really nice and sunny day today.
Yeah, it's beautiful here as well. And Samantha, someday you'll have to tell me why it is called Charm City. I have always wondered that and never bothered looking it up.
Next time.
Yep. Although I did look up catty corner today. Does anybody know where we get that word?
Isn't it like, aren't there like a gazillion different variations of it? Like, isn't it kitty corner, catty corner, cater corner?
Yes. It's a misspelling of a French term. Of course, I don't remember the French term, but the French term looks like catty corner.
Oh, it's like quatre, it's like the four corners, right? Like
yep. And it got so misspelled that it became catty corner. Right. So I used it in a text and I was like, catty corner, what does that even mean? But I think Dagne is slightly catty corner, and I know she's north. Hi, Dagne.
Hello. Yeah, we tend to use kitty corner here, but I have heard catty corner. I'm in a small town called Almont, just outside of Canada's capital, and we are a stand-in for American Small Towns on the Hallmark Channel. If you know anybody who's into watching Hallmark films, I don't, but they are frequently here filming in our small town.
That's really amazing.
It's kind of a hoot. Yeah.
That is really amazing. Wow. Everybody has interesting things to talk about
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, but we are going to read some very interesting poems by Sarah Elkins, and we thank you, Sarah, for sharing these with us. You know what? I haven't read in a really long time. You guys mind if I read this?
That'd be great.
Please.
All right, so we're going to start with birthing. The summer before my son was born, I ate tomato sandwiches with mayonnaise, salt, and pepper. The rain was so heavy in June, the fruit swelled on the vines and their skins ripped. I took big bites, holding thick bread with 2 hands, pink rainwater running down both forearms to my elbows, everything reduced then to hunger. At night, curled on my side in the unair-conditioned dark, I dreamt of big cats' razor tongues dragging the length of my back, saber teeth at my throat, not tearing the skin, but feeling for pulse. Their muscled hips coaxing me into the sweaty delirium of my final weeks. The cats returned every night until 26 hours before I howled him into being. I opened. All the rain of June and July, leaving me for the hardwood floor where I crouched on all fours, looking for flecks of vernix, tasting my wet fingers, sniffing the sweet water for signs it was time. The cats slunk away until now, Eating this tomato sandwich, my first in 12 years. I recall I was a panther once.
Nice reading.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll tell you why I really wanted to read it
Yeah,
after
it's
we
so beautiful.
discuss. But what a beautiful poem.
I agree.
And so tactile.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Tell
the
us
way
why-
all the bodies keep turning into each other, that the tomatoes are kind of splitting and opening their skin, and then she's opening to let out the child, and then the cats. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I howled him into being. Right?
It's very economical with some of the images like that. And I love the pink rainwater from the
Mhm.
tomato sandwich. It's, because you think you get into describing something like that, it could get a little complicated, but it's so succinct.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I love how she picks everything back up again. Now we have all the rain of June and July leaving me for the hardwood floor.
And I love that comma before the end July, as if, like time itself was moving a bit. So it makes you feel like you're with her through that first month.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's a really good point. Yeah. I love the repetition with the cats in that shorter second stanza. The cats returned and then the cat slunk away. There's something quite satisfying in that.
Mm-hmm. And what an ending, right? You don't expect that. I recall I was a panther once.
So Kathy, tell us why you wanted to read it.
Well, living in New Jersey, I love me a tomato sandwich. And just last night, my brother was over and come to town and went to dinner. And then we talked, and I talked about howling my son into being. And what, everybody has their birth stories and there's always something, but, stuff happened during that birth and, he's fine, I'm fine, the whole thing. However, I cried a little while telling him last night and I hadn't done that in years. And so, so I felt even extra close to this poem. So thank you for letting me read it.
Yeah. It's amazing how it opens things up. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm. That's exactly how I eat my tomato sandwiches.
How with mayonnaise and
salt and pepper, nothing else, man. That's all you need with the best Jersey tomatoes at peak.
And so wet forearms too.
Right. Oh yeah. I eat them over the sink.
Oh yeah, like that. That's about as immediate as it gets.
Yep. As we do Jersey white peaches, it's the same thing. They are so juicy. You kind of have to eat them over the sink or with a bib or something. I'm not.
Now we're all hungry.
I miss summer, right?
Well, and that's right in here, isn't it? Everything reduced then to hunger. And I love that contrast with the fact that she's growing. She's obviously very fulsome at this point, but it's reduced to that thing, that hunger.
Yeah. And even her laying on her side in that pregnant condition and
there's a collapse of the kind of different sorts of bodies.
Yeah. And that's also cat-like, right?
Yeah. And then I do just love that whole section, the razor tongues dragging along the length of the back. I mean, it's just, you can feel it. It's very tactile.
So funny. This is fascinating. Slushies. We have not even had one little issue. Nobody's raised a brow over a thing.
My only thing that raised a brow for me that I hadn't mentioned was why such a long opening line.
Oh, okay.
It's very ragged, right? Compared to, the poem, it's not one of those tight columns of a poem, but it really stands out that it's a lot longer. Does it feel right? Did it trip anyone else up? Or
there's an easy break, right? That if it were the summer before my son was born, comma, line break, I ate tomato sandwiches with mayonnaise, line break, right? That it sort of lends itself really easily to a more regular line. But I think it's resisting the sun, right? Like if it's sort of the summer before my son was born, then the opening line is about this person who came into being. And if the opening line is the summer I was born, I ate tomato sandwiches, then the self is foregrounded. So I think that extra long line is a way of kind of positioning the speaker as topic and kind of moving the child away from that focal position, even though we never lose sight.
That's such a good
the sun.
reminder. Yeah, I think you're right. That first line's doing a lot of work. Yeah.
Jason, I'm so glad you're here. You're so brilliant. Because after that issue was brought up, I looked at that and thought, okay, what if it was the summer before my son was born?
Yeah, you read it.
And I thought I would be so less interested, right? I just thought about it very simple as a reader, but you're so right to, articulate it the way that you did. I just thought it'd be less compelling. Somehow the I ate tomato sandwiches makes it far more compelling.
Yeah.
For the exact reason we know we're going to get more than a birth story.
Yeah.
Right.
I do think I would have liked the salt and pepper, though, on the next line. I like this poem the more I read it slowly, because I really want to sink into it, because I do think, I've never been pregnant, but I imagine it must be like a slow waiting period in some ways. So I want the poem to be slow.
That's true too. That's really true. And I think it was. I know that when I was reading it, I wanted to go slow.
Mm.
And it really places the emphasis on the transformation of the body in pregnancy and birth, the ravenous intake and the visceral outtake, the way in which the body, obviously we're all, consuming and expelling, and yet in this case, it takes on this really heightened, powerful form that is, bordering on miraculous, bordering on supernatural, bordering on, and it's, I think about this a lot because I think that the experience of motherhood is often hyper visible, by which I mean that it's often hard once someone is seen as a mother. One is both kind of like that part of the identity can often like take over, and the person who is sort of like subordinated to, and other things become hyper visible. Like if you're a doctor, that often becomes hyper visible, and then you kind of disappear into that. But I just been really curious about ways to represent an experience that's central to one's identity without evacuating one's identity in favor of this kind of role. I don't know if that makes sense. But I feel like this doesn't really, that experience was like, and every way I want to talk about it almost sort of touches on ways in which we talk about birth and motherhood that sort of make it into this weird thing, that make it into a disruption of the natural order instead of part of the natural order. That like, I think that the work that the poem is doing, people talk about this in terms of gynecology or in terms of obstetrics, that, an extremely natural process, becoming pregnant and giving birth, becomes a medical crisis, and becomes almost, it's aligned with illness in a certain way, when it's closer to other, natural phenomenon and harvest and tide and all these different things. And so I love this poem because it sort of returns that experience to something very natural. Yeah. And in returning it kind of reminds us how much we've kind of denatured it.
I was going to say, and primal. Giving birth does connect you to your animal self. You are an animal in the birth process, right? And so I appreciated that for that. Nothing will remind you more that you're an animal. Right.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. And I like the word Jason used, the supernatural too, because for me that really comes in again in that second stanza, all the rain of June and July leaving me for the hardwood floor. It's like it's so much bigger than this woman and her body. It's something happening on a much bigger scale. And again, I mean, for me, that resonates rightly, because while I agree that pregnancy and childbirth have been medicalized, and that it feels better to address how natural it is also very dangerous, and women used to regularly die of it.
Sure.
I have a tipped uterus, and in my first pregnancy, it had to flip around and it pinched my urethra. And at the time, I was living in a big city. I was in London, and my husband had to come home from work and then drive me to the hospital, which was pain on a level I'd never want to experience again, every bump in the road. But, a few hundred years ago, not even that long ago, I'd have died.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I wasn't even that pregnant at that point. So,
Right.
But I really, really like that word supernatural, because it kind of encompasses all of that, because it is this thing that's bigger than any one woman, any one individual. And it takes over. Yeah.
Should we vote? We have other
I think we
poems.
should
I was
vote.
ready to say there's
I
two
think we
more,
should
so
vote.
let's vote.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, vote. And it's unanimous.
Think
No
we saw
surprise.
that.
Thank you, Sarah
I think
Elkins.
we saw that coming.
Oh, very good. Yeah.
Low suspense to this episode of the Slush
On
File.
that one, absolutely not. Yeah, but thank you so much, Sarah Elkins, for that. And now we have lineage. And who would like to go?
I can read it.
Okay.
Lineage. Below the mud, there are caves running with water where blind creatures, having never seen the sun, are not yet angry about what they do not see. A dim light reflects in the wet membranes of their eyes. Somehow, they know enough to ask, why then these eyes? I was born here and have followed the underground streams to stores of salt, long fingers made into clubs, and gossamer webs becoming wings. My son, born here too, lit a candle on his way out. It flickers absently against my cheek. The warmth is a sort of seeing. Such a different piece.
Mm-hmm.
It obviously feels like a tight little allegory. What the allegory is, that's less clear to me.
I love the last stanza. I love the first line break. Yeah, I see it as like those two first stanzas, like you said, being more of an allegory, and then kind of the secret feels in that last one.
Yeah, and I was trying to figure out exactly, do I know for sure what's going on in that last stanza? It sounds a lot like the sun leaving and the speaker staying behind, right? But that candle was lit for them on the way out. It's definitely got a mystery going on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I thought that initially that it might be sort of a retelling of Plato's allegory of the cave, but that doesn't seem to be the case. I mean, if you try to sort of like bring that, it doesn't work at all. This is definitely like its own allegory, and I like it as deep image. If I try to sort of like track the allegory, I get really frustrated and I can't. If I kind of stay with the poem and the lineage, or the lineation and the language and the syntax, I'm really happy.
Yeah, well said. That's how I'm feeling about it. Like if I try and make sense of it, I'm not getting very far, but I do like the experience of it. It's very economically done. It's got some lovely images. Kathy, what do you think?
I love how it ends, and like the other one, I do see that she keeps, certain threads keep coming, and it's very hard to put away that sense making part. The middle stanza for me is the weakest, and I think that as soon as I see gossamer web I'm not happy with that image. So I'm trying to connect it to the wet membranes earlier. I guess I'm too busy over here. My silence was my thinking and trying to figure out even what these images are. I don't quite see long femurs made into clubs and gossamer webs becoming wings. I don't.
Well, no, I mean, those are all, because it doesn't really make sense. You sort of like have these beings who can't see, but know they have eyes and are asking why they have eyes, but don't have anything to see with them, but haven't been anywhere else. And no, I mean, like if you're in a lot of the ways, like it keeps directing us towards an allegorical reading that then keeps collapsing. And so you're sort of like looking for the tenor. You're like, okay, so this is the vehicle. Okay, what does this represent? It's very, very hard to read literally, like to stay in it at the literal level often just feels a little bit contradictory, that the sun has escaped or left or like knew to light the candle on his way out, right? Because it's in darkness. Everything sort of feels just a little bit inconsistent.
Yeah, because the first stanza
in places the imagery is really wonderful and amazing, and the pacing is fantastic.
Yeah, I think, Jason, in that first stanza, it feels as though we're getting like this overview, but then you discover in the second and third that it's somebody who's also there experiencing it. And so that's when it kind of stops making sense. The perspectives don't mesh.
Somehow they know enough to ask, why then these eyes?
Exactly.
And if it feels sort of like a creation myth in that first stanza, the blind creatures asking these eyes. I mean, it's kind of interesting and hopeful. Like if this is like speakers of a world beyond or a world we don't remember, and like her or our author like taking that on, I find really interesting. But then I don't think, it's quite explored enough. But then at the same time, I think if I just came across this poem and read it, I think I would recognize pretty early on that I'm not going to kind of get a narrative or something that I can grasp onto that way. And kind of like what Jason and Dagne said earlier, like I think just actually take delight in the language and kind of the punctuation choices and stuff. And I prefer that than to a poem where I feel like I would wrestle with it for a long time and not come out with a lot. I don't think it's trying to trick us, I guess I'm saying, to look for more.
We do have one more. Is this one discussed enough? Is there anything?
Yeah, I feel like we should vote.
Okay. All right, let's do it. 1, 2, 3, vote. Okay. So we're going to pass on this one. And we're going to move right along to From the Tall Grass. Jason, let's do it.
All right. From the tall grass. I'm ready. From the tall grass. I floss at night after steak and butter. My house, unguarded range, bison huffing, ice-faced, hooves stamping an echo stutter. I do nothing in this boundless nothing. No thought, no synapse firing, still hands still, stained, berry juice of an empty morning. This roomless space, a translucent thin will through which I, good sow, with my boys homing. His trek complete, except for the recount. Bighorn sheep, bull moose, near miss, eagle plume. I toss one sleek mink to the catamount. The grass lies down. Walls rise around my room. Ursa fades. A house cat lurks in willow. I sip gin, smooth the pelt of my pillows.
Nice. Thank you.
I think this is such an interesting piece. It's I find it very strong. It's full of some fantastic imagery. That opener, I floss at night after steak and butter. I mean, and in a sonnet. I mean, that's it's kind of brave. Again, very sensory, but there's much more aware of wordplay in this one, and just attention to language. Still hands, still stained. It's a great moment. I love that.
I do too. And the rest of it, berry juice of an empty morning.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah. Like, where did that come from? I love it.
Mm-hmm.
The speaker is very back into animal mode, being a good sow whiffing her boys homing.
Right.
Yeah.
So this has the animals and the food, like the first one, right?
Yes.
Which makes it so sensuous, almost, right? It's
exactly
so evocative.
It's so visceral, and so unexpected. There's so many places where it sort of reverses course. As I was reading, it sort of kept, I do nothing in this boundless nothing. This roomless space, a translucent thin will. And I sort of expected that to be wall, a translucent thin wall,
yes.
and it's a translucent thin will. And over and over again, it sort of like sets something up and then slightly twists it in this way that carries you through to somewhere that you didn't expect to go.
And still at the end of the day, it has this what seems like a mother and son theme to it, in waiting for the son to go home. So even though it kind of feels for me like a little bit ethereal or home on the range or something, there's this thread going through it that is reminiscent of some of the other poems we read, but also seems a little bit universal, which I like.
And mother is big cat again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is interesting, talking about tossing a mink to the catamount, the cat of the mountain, but then also returning to being like a cat again.
Is the mink being fed to the catamount?
I think so.
Yeah, I assume so.
I love the kind of safety inside the violence of the landscape, that there's this kind of big wide world that's being traversed by herds, by animals, by children, and then the poem takes place in kind of this still center that I love. And it sort of seems perfect for a sonnet, that, you know, you have this like huge expanse with something kind of staying still in the middle of it.
Yeah, and kind of speaking of that, I think my favorite image of it is this idea of how when an animal is in the grassland and they make the grass lie down and the walls are the grass. And it's so exciting to me to think about that kind of in comparison to that translucent thin will, where, like a lot of you, I expected it to be wall as well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And we get the walls later. Walls rise around my room. I like this inside outside thing. Are we inside or outside? Right. And she's been so animal, you know, sniffing the boy, like all of it. Right. And then we get, I sip gin, smooth the pelt of my pillows.
I sip gin is really the only part that feels human to me.
Yeah.
That I feel, oh, okay, I don't think that the big cats have access to that. So
right. But that's what's awesome. And she's still kind of in both places at once, right? Smooth the pelt of my pillows. I do see somebody reclining, you know, it with all of these pillows around, but you know, I love the inside outside part of that.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's quite amazing, over 14 lines to go from flossing to then being back on those pillows with the gin. You're right, because in the midst of it all, we forget about any kind of human speaker, and it's so animal. But then we're right back there, and yeah, it's very satisfying.
And isn't that last image, like a queen cat. Like I do see lots and lots of voluptuous pillows, and Slushies, you can't see it, but Dagne just like reclined in this very elegant way and held her gin. And that's what I see, though. I see exactly that move in that sipping gin amongst my pillows and just surveying all that is mine, this land and these animals, and she is dominion, right?
Perfectly put. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I see the pillows as like the grass, and I know we can go back and forth through it, but that's kind of where my image ended on that, which I like. But I do wonder if cats do floss, or like, probably not. That's probably not true, but I'm sure they get things stuck in their teeth as well.
They might do something like floss.
Yeah.
They do a lot of grooming. Yeah.
I really love, I've probably said this before, but you start with the title, obviously, and then you read the poem. I love, my eye always goes right back to the title. And I love when that rewards me, when that thrills me, and this title does do that. It's so lovely to be reminded of where we began and where we've been, what our POV has been the whole time.
That's
Great.
so interesting. On my copy, the title is on the page before, so I forgot about the title. So that's fun. Now I see it. Oh, that's great.
Sometimes my students don't read the title when they're reading poetry aloud, and it like hurts me so much.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I really wish that books wouldn't publish the name after the title a lot, because I don't like that at all. I think it's such an intrusion, and so I feel the same way as you, Kathy, but I also feel equally when they read the title and then the name and then the rest of the poem.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we might be voting.
Yeah, because all I was going to say is, like, I could just read this again. Can we just hang out and read this all day? I think we should vote. Are we ready? Here we go. Re-vote. And it's in. Yeah, Sarah Elkins. Woohoo! Yeah, thank you for allowing us to discuss your work. And Slushies, please send us notes and chime in about what you think and feel about what we had to say. Anybody have anything they'd like to add? No? All right. Well, thank you to everybody for being here, and keep reading. Woohoo!
Yeah, thanks. Bye.
Thanks, Slushies.